Are you ready to take your first steps towards financial freedom by investing in property? Whether you're a first-time investor or you've started your portfolio but need some help continuing to grow, 2022 REB Buyer's Agent of the Year and Rising Star finalist Lachlan Vidler and his team at Atlas Property Group are here to help. As experts in property investment, Lachlan and his team are ready to help you take your next step in growing your portfolio. By completing the research, sourcing and negotiations, Lachlan goes the extra mile to find you a high-performing investment property. Visit atlaspropertygroup.com.au to book in your discovery call absolutely free of charge.
This is a Momentum Media production.
Welcome to the Smart Property Investment Show, the podcast by investors for investors.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day you are listening to this episode. Welcome back to a brand new show of the Smart Property Investment Show. I'm Grace Ormsby. I love the conversations that I get to be having on this show. It is one of the highlights of my week. Sometimes I am lucky enough to get to do a couple of them, and today will be no different. Obviously, talking to investors, it's a huge part of what we do here at the Smart Property Investment Show, and it's so important to be lifting the lid on people's different strategies. You know, no one is going to be going about property investment the same way as someone else is, and someone who's got a little bit of a unique story to share, and by all accounts, it's sounding pretty successful so far, is today's guest, Stephanie Garner. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Grace. Thank you so much for inviting me to the SPI show. I've listened since 2014, so it's actually, it's really exciting to be invited on the show, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. To anyone else who is listening along and thinks that, they could be our next guest, don't hesitate to reach out. That's what Stephanie did in the first instance, just to share her story. And I went, this is a great story. You need to be talking about it. And that's how this opportunity came about. Editor at smartpropertyinvestment.com.au. If you've got a story that might be similar to Stephanie's or a little bit different, we want to hear from you. But Stephanie, what really grabbed my attention in the first instance is, as you've been investing for quite a while now, since 2014, to start off with, and we're going to get into your portfolio later, so everyone keep listening because it's a sizable portfolio and it's only going to get bigger. But what first sparked that interest for you in property investing?
So it wasn't in particular that I'd always had an obsession with property or that I always wanted to have a big portfolio. I absolutely didn't even know that it was possible to have more than one property. I didn't know anyone who had more than one or two properties. So it was more me trying to find how I can live my life, have more options in life, and create something for me and my husband, would give us options, experiences, and choice to live our lives the way we want to and not be confined by, going to a 9 to 5 and doing something that doesn't light us up inside. Like, what can you do? What's out there that we can take action on and create something for ourselves? And it just happened to be property was something we both understood. So we just went all in, and we're continuing to build momentum with it. It's constant learning, and it's been an interesting ride. Yeah.
You and your husband do still work regular jobs, don't you?
Yes.
You haven't taken on property full time. So what do you work as, if you don't mind me asking?
No, so I work just as an entry-level role for a large Australian organisation. I'd say it's a very task-driven role, just a repetitive day in, day out type of job. My husband's a bus driver, works for, an Australian company. And so the very normal roles, we go to work, we come home, and, I think when you get to a point where you're like, there's got to be more to life than this. Like, I'm not just here to survive. Like, I want to thrive. So, that's where we're up to.
Good on you. But, obviously those roles are what has allowed you to, make some money and get that equity and that savings balance behind you to be embarking on a property investment journey. So there's a means to an end, obviously, with that.
Yes. And, showing up to a job every day that's not necessarily, fulfilling, or it might not be attached to your purpose in life. It still has a role, like you say. It's given us serviceability for the banks to be satisfied to give us loans, but also it's taught us massive discipline, showing up each day, doing something that even though you don't enjoy, it's getting you to where you want to be. Yeah, so that self-discipline will never go away, turning up with a good attitude, getting it done, and, life would just be full of options for you, just taking that view on it.
Because you're not originally from here, are you, either, from Australia?
No, we migrated to Australia in 2011. So I've been here just nearly 11 years now. And we actually turned up to Australia with something like $30,000. The UK was just going through the whole 2008 GFC, and my husband was a builder in the UK. So with any economic shifts, building is always the first to be hit. So he hadn't, had consistent work for, a reasonable amount of time. But it did prompt him to think, while things are slowing down in the UK, I might just go for it and live out my dream and go to Australia. And I couldn't see anything wrong with it. I thought, just go for it.
What are the biggest differences then for you being in Australia compared to what you were doing before?
So in the UK, I was a hairdresser. I've worked full time since I was 15. And, in the UK, I think it's so different. I think just because you speak the same language, that you think you come to an English-speaking country, that everything's the same. And I actually find it so different lifestyle, just having that change of scenery, although a bigger change of scenery than one usually would, really just gave me the confidence to, do something like property. Because with competence, it builds your confidence to just try.
Yeah. And there is a really different attitude to property investing over there as well. Like, was it something that you would have considered if you were still living in the UK?
Absolutely not. I came from, I suppose, like a very working class, small town where, money was hard to come by. It was a struggle. You saved up to go on holiday once or twice a year, and that was a massive, massive luxury if you could do that. So your best options were to get a job and just do your best. It wasn't ever go out, live your dreams, you can do anything. It was get a job and survive and make the best of it.
And I want to get, a little bit more around what living your dream will be for you. We'll touch on that a little bit later in the episode, but let's get into this property portfolio that you have amassed so far, Stephanie. Talk us through what that first purchase was and what that experience was actually like for you.
When we first came to Australia in 2011, we came to Perth, WA. WA was experiencing a little bit of its own economic boom. So finding a rental was difficult, just the same as it is now, actually. There's so many similarities, which is really interesting taking it through that cycle a second time. So, it was turning up to rentals, trying to plan that foundation for us both to just live our lives. And it was such a struggle. You were fighting with 40 of their families with the babies in their arms, just trying to find somewhere to live and bidding more. So once we did find a rental, we didn't have any knowledge on, this might only be a moment in time. We just thought that was what the property market was like here. So it was like, well, we're going to have to buy somewhere. So we're just that bit more comfortable and just feel confidence, that you've got a home to go to, a roof over your head. So we actually started building a house. We just went straight into it. And it must have been like 9 or 10 months after we landed in WA that I was just like, let's just build somewhere. So, we
Good
have
on you.
Yeah, I can't believe it now looking back. But I think because we'd made that big leap going from the UK to Australia, we kind of had that momentum of action taking, and it just went from there. So we had the luxury of the first time home buyers grants attached to building new homes. So, that was like, wow, you can do this, and how cool is having a brand new house. So we actually built our first PPOR and loved it and felt so grateful that, in this beautiful brand new home. And then did you want to get onto the second property?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's go. Yeah. Let's keep going through them.
So we was living in that one. And then my husband did have a home in the UK, which he sold while we was here. I suppose it was quite difficult to keep a track of being in the UK. And he felt more comfortable just cutting, all ties with that, just so he felt, he had that security of knowing that he could control his assets more over here.
Of course.
So that money he brought over here, and we was like, what can we do with that? They'll, be working for us. And still at this point, we didn't know property investing was an option for us. But we was like, so we've got our PPOR, maybe we can put that money to use in another property. So we had this lump sum, and we had to contribute some equity that we'd built in our PPOR to buy the second house. Now, we didn't know where to invest, but we'd had a good experience with building first. So it was like, why not build another one? And there was land for sale. Like, there's so much land in like the northern and southern suburbs in WA. It was like, how amazing to get as close to the beach as we can. So, it's like this little block that we purchased and, did a package, house and land package. So we put everything into that. So we'd not even finished our PPOR, like the painting and all that.
Really?
Yeah. So for our second purchase with my husband's funds that he got from the UK and the equity that we'd built in our PPOR, we'd put everything into this second property with no knowledge of any economic climate, economic shifts that was, boosting WA's bit of a boom they was having on the back of the mining boom. So we had no knowledge of this. So that second build was complete in 2014. Now, every time I say this to a mortgage broker or a buyer's agent, the whole scenario of a brand new house on the edge of the suburbs in 2014, and they just have this vision of everything crashing, which it did. But we just didn't have the luxury of the knowledge then. So we had the foresight of, we knew roughly what that second property would rent for. And by the time it came around to finding a tenant, so I think it was 420 that it would rent for as we was building. And then it suddenly went down to 350, which was still fine, but, still had no idea that things were about to get a whole lot worse in WA, which was the best thing that could ever happen to us because it made us pay attention to everything around us, like why this property market was declining, why we were struggling to find tenants, what happens to property that makes them have these shifts. So I actually look back, and that was my biggest gift, that pain of finding tenants, and actually the rental value went down to something like 280 from 420. So it was it was an interesting time.
How much did you pay for that property in the first place? Just to give an idea.
It was 460. Yeah, 460 to build. Now, this was a very small house, like a 3x2. They call it like a cottage block on 300 square meters of land, but also it's 300 meters from the beach. So at the time I was like, that isn't it so amazing?
Absolutely, a selling factor.
Who can live that close? Yeah. So that was my way of thinking then. And obviously I think so much different now. I've got so much more knowledge, but I've only got knowledge because of those tough times. So I'll never look back and regret any of those purchases, but it doesn't mean I'll be making them again.
Do you still own those properties, those first two?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, we've taken them through, this market cycle. We've taken them through, that low period where, so just to give you an idea, trying to rent that property out when we had a vacancy. So the suburbs was a new suburb, and in a kilometre radius, if you imagine a kilometre around the house, there was 50 other brand new build rental properties, and you have to find a tenant and be attractive to that tenant, and make sure they're a quality tenant too. So it's like, how do you overcome these challenges? How do you get your property manager on board to be active in finding you someone? Everyone was hurting around that time.
So what did you do then? Like, how did you, one, overcome that, and then sort of still keep the mindset of property investing is the way forward here?
Yeah. So our property manager rang us when we did have that vacancy. So our tenant was paying $350 and they was moving on. So when we got that call, you could tell she was slightly nervous, our property manager. And she was like, your property that was worth $350 a week is now barely worth $280. I'm really sorry.
There's no like softening that up, is there? There's no like putting glitter on it or trying to make it sound any better than that. That's tough.
No, it was a very straightforward conversation, because just behind how she told me, you could tell I wasn't the only person that she'd had to tell that day, that week. And I can't imagine what she had to deal with her owner's emotions and tenants' emotions, But I'd been watching what's happened. I wasn't ignorant to what was going on, what was coming up for rent. Like, you could see it. All you need to do is go on realestate.com and I could see all these rental properties similar to mine. So I just took a really proactive approach. I was like, it's fine. You know what? Even put it on for a bit less. Just get those applications coming through the door. Be as attractive as possible. Let's make sure it's as tidy as possible. Let's, what else can we do? Can we market it like, get a week free? Or because the longer it's, on the market, you're just losing, the idea of holding out for a certain figure that you think your property is worth.
Yeah, you're losing that in that first week, aren't you?
Yeah.
Really.
So taking that just proactive, it is what it is, taking that proactive approach and being on board with your property manager, working with them, not against them. I feel like they carried that attitude through when they did have people viewing. And we did have a tenant apply who had a stable government job. And it was just like, this is great. And I feel like, again, that good attitude comes into it. What you put out there, you definitely attract. But learning those skills, how to work with your team, is just, you can't put a price on that. So invaluable through those tough times.
So, Stephanie, moving on to what happened next, because that would have been a trial by fire, but you stuck with it clearly and you've still got those properties now. So what was next for you?
Yeah. Well, I clearly looked at our situation and I was just like, what's gone wrong? Like, we made all those decisions with our best knowledge at the time, and I was obviously missing information. So I began searching for the information I was missing to make this a success. So then I got into podcasts such as the SCI show and a range of different podcast books, and those gaps started to slowly fill in. It's so helpful hearing other people's stories about their successes, because they'd clearly approached it so much differently than what we did. And just hearing those little tips of what worked for them, we took that and did the research for ourselves on what it meant to us, whether that's actually finding a mortgage broker who is investment savvy for a start. We didn't have a mortgage broker who, I suppose, was in line with any investment goals. Now, those two properties in WA were cross-collateralized, which you'll hear that across, some educational podcast days. It can get you really stuck, and it did for a time, because we had equity in one property and one property was in negative equity. So those two properties were tied together, which made the whole amount, we just stuck. You just can't do anything with that.
Yeah.
Which, hearing that, don't do cross collateralizing. You might get stuck. And actually experiencing it is totally different. And I've got a much different outlook on when we approach our financing now. Yeah.
As you would. But it all comes with experience, doesn't it? And life experience and learning and what you do pick up on the way. So when did you then make the plunge on a third property, and how did that actually become possible if you did feel like you were so stuck after those first two purchases?
Yes. So with those two purchases, we made them ourselves. And so we quickly realised that other people who'd made a success had help. They went to experts. They had mortgage brokers on their side knowing their goals. They went to buyer's agents. They, had a good accountant. And so we didn't have any of those things set up initially. So that's where we started. So we went to a buyer's agent, which was actually Steve Waters.
There you go.
Which is a friend of the SPI show.
Yeah, we've heard a lot from him. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And he was probably the best person we could have gone to, because actually, I don't know if this comes across to other people when Steve talks with Phil a lot. Steve's actually so nurturing, and he was so kind and really understood what we'd been through, in those two property purchases. And he really held our hand through getting another one. But, a bit better this time, and set up so we can continue. So Steve was very kind. He spent time with us, he educated us, and that was just so invaluable.
So when did you pull the trigger on a third property then?
So the second build was finished in 2014, and it was 2017 when we reached out to Steve Waters to help us. So we did have a gap while we was navigating the property market. So we went to Queensland this time, and this was sight unseen with the help of a buyer's agent, which was really interesting. And actually, we've continued to buy sight unseen in different states, and they're our best performing properties that we're not involved, emotions not involved. It's just, it comes down to what your goals are, what the figures are. And
I feel like as well, there would have been so much emotion within those first two properties. It's great that I think you're still holding on to them, Stephanie, and for you to also have that different approach for those next properties is cool as well. They can work together, having the emotions involved and taking them out too. So you've clearly, used a few different strategies along the way. So can you just, I guess, give us some insight into what your total portfolio is valued at, if that's okay? And then we'll break it down and sit and talk through each of the individual properties and where they're at the moment.
Yes. So it's sitting around, I think it's sitting around $2.5 million.
And that's 6 properties, isn't it? Is that correct?
6 properties. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And they're all different. We've got townhouses, houses, units. Yeah, we're not stuck to any particular property. It's just, since we've evolved in our learning, it does come down to whatever our goals are, and whatever property suits that is what we'll go with.
So can we go through just those first 2 properties, and they were the Perth ones? Have you recouped some of those losses that did occur through that cycle yet? Like, where are you sitting at with those now?
Yes. So this cycle has been interesting. So Perth, as you listeners may know, is going through another good time in the cycle. So one of the properties is going good, and, has just passed the height of 2014. Okay. So I believe we're only just at where we'd grown to in 2014 before that dip. And the other one that we built near the beach, I would say is exactly the same value. I don't think it's grown anything. Yeah,
but it's bringing you cash flow now?
Yeah, it's fine. It's cash flow positive. We're able to hold it. We don't need, to like sell it quickly. Yeah, we can hold it through the next cycle. Absolutely fine. Yeah.
It's a long game, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So then those third, fourth, fifth, and sixth properties. Can you give us a quick rundown of what the specs are looking like on each of those?
Yes. So our Queensland one, we bought one in Brisbane. And so this was bought with Steve Waters. So this one was an older property. So our first one that was established. And this one was $271,000. And I must admit, when I looked at it, I was like, oh, do people like live in these homes? Because I didn't know, what an investment grade property would or what tenants wanted. So, we took the advice and, it's a very popular home. We've had long-term tenants in there. And yeah, it's been a great property. So that's actually now almost doubled in value.
I was going to say it's been a pretty good period. You must be looking at that Queensland property market at the moment and be really glad that you got in when you did.
Yes. So after the Brisbane property, we actually bought one again with a buyer's agent on the Gold Coast in a suburb near the M1. And actually that one's doubled too. So when I'm looking at the returns, when I've took advice, when I've bought properties that's in line with our goals, we've achieved good things just buying, holding, taking them through them cycles. And when we've bought on our own with no clear direction, no knowledge, you can see a vast difference of results.
So what was that second Gold Coast property? What did you buy that for?
It's a townhouse in an older complex, and that was 220. Mm-hmm. And that one's recent sales will be in the 400s for similar in that complex. Yeah.
So then number 5 and number 6, just to get through them.
So
quickly.
number 5 and number 6 we bought this year, and we actually settled those on the same day. It was that first time that we've bought 2 at a time, which was really interesting. We've learned a lot, and they are 2 units. So they're both in North Queensland, but in different areas. Yeah.
Okay. And pulled the equity then from those previous, the Gold Coast and the Brisbane properties.
Yeah.
Is that how you achieved that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
we used equity.
Good sales prices on those ones?
Yes. So these ones, we only settled these 3 months ago. So I've actually just got in touch with our broker. So they're doing the numbers on them and seeing, what equity we can pull out. So that's what they're working on this week.
Amazing. Well, we're going to take a quick break there. We'll be back soon with more from Stephanie Garner.
Ever wondered how you can invest like the top 1% of Australian property investors? Henderson Advocacy has been at the forefront of helping everyday Aussies improve their financial freedom. So if you're a savvy investor or someone just starting out on their property journey, give Henderson Advocacy a call today. Head to www.henderson.com.au. Don't invest alone. Invest smarter.
Welcome back to this episode of the Smart Property Investment Show. I'm joined by Stephanie Garner. Stephanie, it's been great to hear about how you've amassed these 6 properties, and I know that you've still got goals for growth in your property portfolio, and we're going to be talking about that a little bit later. But before we do, I really want to unpack. I know you've got a little bit of an alternative strategy in place with one of your rental properties at the moment. You're not just leasing it out for long-term tenants, which is generally the way that people go with these things. So you've gone down the short-term rental and photo shoot route. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Because I'm very curious as to how this stacks up as a strategy for investment in property.
Yeah, so people are always fascinated by this. So when we had that, dip in Perth and we'd bought 2 of the Queensland properties, we had no equity and no serviceability to keep going at that time, unless we increased our income through rents or through working or until the property market shifted. And so WA was down and going down and Queensland was flat for a long period. So we couldn't do anything. We couldn't do more and we wanted more. So I just put my brain to use. I'm like, what can we do? So we had like we say, the WA property near the beach, and it's a beautiful area. And we had the idea that it'd be really nice as a short stay accommodation one day. And because we had this period where we was waiting, we couldn't do anything too much, couldn't purchase more property. We was like, do you know what? We'll just give it a go, because we're not here to just survive. We're going to thrive.
What do we got to lose?
Yeah, that's right. We're going to get in there, make it feel amazing, make people welcome, and just give it a go. So my husband, being a builder, like that was his thing. That's where he really came in, and he's like, yes, let's do this, He was like, I can, this is my thing. I can do it. So he, did the landscaping, made it really welcome. I put some really effort in with the styling. So it was more like a boutique accommodation. It wasn't just like furnished accommodation. I tried to make a story of it and a theme around, there's a shipwreck in the area. So I really put some thought into it. Why would people want to come to this property to stay? Because it's not a holiday area. It's not a transitional area where people are stopping along the way. So I really needed it to have the look that you'd be like, oh, I want to stay there and experience, these surroundings. So that's what we did. But when we opened, I started up at Instagram as a way of marketing, sharing little screenshots, snapshots of like the look and the feel, and, come stay here, be relaxed, all this kind of thing. And what happened was WA photographers and creatives were commenting and saying, can I come and do a photo shoot there? And, I'm all for like just expressing yourself and not being stuck to what something should be. So I just said yes. I had no idea about this photo shoot opportunity. And basically what it is since, I think, especially since the pandemic, there's been a lot of online businesses being set up. People are going for what they want to. They're starting candle businesses or coaching businesses. And for that, they need pictures. So they'll hire a nice home or a location. They'll hire the photographer. They'll get the makeup done. They'll get the stylist. And then, they'll tell the story of their business through pictures. So they used our property as, oh, I'm just in the kitchen today having a cup of tea. This is how I wake up, and then they can tell their story through Instagram, through their pictures. So, we had these photographers reach out, they'd have clients and then they matched the location. So I saw this as a real lucrative opportunity, because when I've looked at other locations, they're quite popular over East. I don't know, some properties, I mean, these are the beautiful ones, like they can earn up to $3,000 a day. Yeah, just by having like a film crew come in, a photographer.
Yeah.
So I didn't charge that much. I think I started around $500 for 8 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So,
which is more than I'm assuming you could get renting it out short term.
Yeah, so we started around $300 a night, and it was so much easier. You don't have beds to change, and the wear and tear is easy, and you don't have to, be checking in with people. They just turned up, did the thing, went home, and you'd barely notice that they'd been anywhere. But as well, from this, it's a real organic way of marketing, because of course they want to share stories with their audience. So they're like, guess where I am today? And they'll tag you, they'll repost you, they'll actually give you the pictures to share with your audience on social media. So it's a real like ecosystem of just celebrating each other. Yeah. So of course, when one photographer had been, there was a whole thing of fear of missing out. Then the other photographers wanted to come. And for the first 6 months, we were so busy just with photo shoots.
How many would you be getting?
So probably 3 a week.
Mm-hmm.
And booking for half a day was definitely most popular.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually put the price up to $350 for half a day and like $650 for a full day, which was still reachable as a small business and as a photographer. But it was like great for us. Like I was like, wow, that's so much.
Mm.
So yeah, we had around 3 a week.
I feel like a lot of people would be listening to this and their brains must be ticking over like, why haven't we gone down this route with our own, properties, especially if you've got it set up so nicely. And a lot of people, especially in tight markets, you have to have a presentable home for people to be looking at it. So is this something now where you're like, is your brain even like the opportunities here are endless with this?
Yes. Well, I actually really enjoyed working with the photographers. I think naturally I'm more creative than academic driven. And it was a role I'd gone back into, building those relationships with them really easily and getting people on board, making them feel so comfortable that they can just show up, be themselves. But actually, when it came to reassessing our portfolio, now that the market's changed, to get more properties, it actually worked against us because we hadn't been in business for like a year, 2 years for the banks to, accept the income. And they didn't typically like Airbnb income because it wasn't consistent. So that was the challenge we had to overcome. And so we've actually since closed that, and it's actually now gone back to a regular rental because I think when you're so clear on your goals, it makes making decisions really easier. So to grow our property portfolio, we actually needed that servicing from that property. But it was still open 14 months. I learned so much. And yeah, it was just the best time. And it actually, I do want to explore more of that in the future, but I would set it up so differently, maybe like commercially or more, it would have been far easier to manage 10 than one because you'd have people helping you. Yeah, so watch this space.
Yeah, I mean, it does sound like something that you can so easily dip back into when it does suit you. And the fact that you've found that creative outlet and that passion, there's no way you're not going to go back into that.
No, I mean, there's always something you can do. And yeah, you just never know. Like I never knew to market to creatives is an option. So it just shows you need to take that first step in taking actions towards your dreams. And, the world will just open up to you and just present you with different things that are just made for you.
Good on you, Stephanie. We're going to continue this conversation right after another break. See you on the other side.
It's time to get help. Interest rates are increasing. Inflation has hit an extraordinary 5.1%, and the chance to secure a golden egg property is getting narrower by the day. Dragan from Buyers Agency Australia has been presenting the facts and helping property investors make smarter, well-informed, educated decisions in property for years. So, what are you waiting for? Get in touch with Dragan today at www.buyersagencyaustralia.com.au. Invest with integrity.
Welcome back to this episode of the Smart Property Investment Show. We're joined by Stephanie Garner. Stephanie, just before the break, you were talking about having that really cool business opportunity that you never really saw coming as part of your property investment journey. And it does feel like a bit of a shame that you had to close it, but it sounds like when one door shuts, another one opens, and that's what's been the case for you. What are your plans with your property portfolio next? Like, it sounds like you're not nearly done with this process. So I'm keen to hear, where do your dreams and hopes and aspirations actually lie?
So, Grace, I feel like I'm only just starting, literally. So I feel like I've had all this experience in building, in good times, in bad times, in exploring a little bit of business and, active investment, I suppose. But I've learned so much. I'm ready to just condense all that knowledge and put it into growing a portfolio that will, give us the options that we want in the future. And I suppose it comes back down to, a lot of different mindset podcasts or books will talk about your why. But I think for me, it more comes down to your values and what you value in life. And personally, I'm a massive freedom person. So I want options. Like I can't tell you, I want to do this, this, and this. It's more just having that freedom to explore, to, just live life the way you want to.
So I mean, having those options, it also sounds like you don't really have a set amount of properties that you are looking to achieve. But like, what is next for you then, though? Are you looking at the moment? Are you holding for a little bit? Like, what will be the next steps in growing that portfolio so you can keep that dream on track?
Yes, so I really want to, keep momentum going with our portfolio. We've recently just engaged with a new buyer's agent. I feel like I was looking for someone to really, rather than help us develop a strategy, which is why you would use a buyer's agent, you're going to leverage their knowledge, their time in the market, their knowledge about what's worked, what hasn't worked. And I really value paying for that knowledge. It gets you to where you want to be quicker. Mm-hmm. But I also wanted someone, to just be there more of like a mentor along the way to help you know what's possible. And I think we've just found that in this buyer's agent out. And I think you should never underestimate the power of support. That's what I really feel with this relationship with their company. And yeah, I've just never felt so supported, so understood with what we want to achieve. So now I feel like, that's out the way with. We can just roll with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel, just get in. And that's why after, our last 2 properties settled 3 months ago, that's why I have the confidence to just be like, let's go again. And, maybe let's go again and just keep that momentum going.
So are you chasing then the positive cash flow or the capital gains at this point in time for the next few properties? I'm gonna say few because I don't feel like you're gonna be stopping at one anytime soon.
Yeah. So because me and my husband have, I suppose, what's like a lower income jobs, we always have to make sure we always have serviceability available to get loans. And you obviously need the equity for the deposit, for the closing costs. We always have to have a balance of that cash flow and to make sure the properties, in an area that is good for growth and has those fundamentals too, that you can go in and extract equity. But also attached to it, we do need that cash flow for, so the banks are happy with that income equity ratio. Yeah. So it's a mix of both for us, I think.
Yeah, $2.5 million is pretty sizable now. And obviously the world is your oyster. You can be achieving so much more beyond that. Do you have any ballpark figures or, hopes for how high that could actually get?
So rather than a number on what I want the portfolio to be worth or how many properties, I'm going to work on, how much income do I want to replace per month with my property portfolio.
Good way to look at it.
So I would say, to start with, I would love to replace our income, get rid of that as quick as possible. So we can, we have these options, plus a little bit more to, experience life. Mm-hmm. So I'm working towards replacing our income and having a bit more. So that would be around $20,000 per month. And I think we're at a surplus of around $5,000 per month now. So I think if you can achieve 5, why can't you achieve 20?
Exactly. Yeah. Especially, when you're on the right track and you know what you're doing now. You've had all those learnings along the way. Must make it much easier. And as you said, having that new buyer's agent on board, the confidence to go out and actually do that would be there.
Yes. And actually, when these properties settled, and, I was speaking to the representative who I speak to then, they're like, how is everything? We've already sent an email off just to check your position. And I was actually really emotional just to have that back in, like, right, you've done that. Now you're going to continue because, we're only human. I procrastinate. You try and keep yourself safe and comfortable. And actually, you need someone on your side to take you out to that comfort and be like, we can do this. Let's keep going. So, that was the real, I'd say emotional moment for me.
It almost sounds like this buyer's agent moonlights as a personal coach.
Yeah, I feel like he's had lots of experience himself. And I would say we spoke about 10% on how we're going to get there, how we're going to keep buying properties. And the rest of the time I felt like, he really took the time to get to know me, like personality, what's your drivers, you know, what are you about? Like, and then we can make it work. I can get you to where you want to be. And that was great because, you know, I have had mortgage brokers in the past or other professionals saying, let's just wait, let's play safe. And actually this person was telling me, no, we can do more. So I was like, yes, someone's speaking my language. Yeah.
And I feel like 90% of our conversation too has kind of epitomized that approach. And I love that. But I do have to ask, there's a little part inside of me that goes with that 10%. Where are you looking to sort of invest next? You know, where do you actually see opportunities out there? Do you mind sharing any of that?
Yeah. So I look at realestate.com just like everyone else. I know markets that, you know, I would love to invest into, but I'm honestly going to go with the strategy of the buyer's agents, what they've set out for us, where they think opportunities are. So, you know, next that could be in WA or that could be another one in Queensland. But it all comes back to how much we can service for and what is the cash flow we need attached to that property to keep going. So that's what our mortgage broker is just doing right now. We're seeing how much equity we can get. So they may come back and say, okay, you can service for another $200,000 loan, but you know, the bank's going to want to need $300 a week to make this deal happen. So, you know, then that narrows it down to different areas that we'll be presented with. So I'm definitely not like the property nerds who know all about the data and what areas, you know, are growing more. But yeah, I will say we're just going to go with whatever is going to keep us continuing in the market.
That's the benefit of having that team supporting you, that you don't need to be worrying about all of that, especially when you're already working. You don't need to be dealing with that as well. But Stephanie, it's been so wonderful to chat with you. And we were saying off air, and I'll let all our listeners know that there is so much that we could have, you know, still been talking about. We'll have to get you back for a part 2 sooner rather than later. So if anyone does have any questions for Stephanie, let me know, because I'd love to ask them next time we get on the show, because you've been a great guest to chat to. Your story is so inspiring for so many reasons. And I think it warrants a bit more chat about some of those properties, and you'll probably have an update by the sounds of things too.
Yes, I hope so. And it's a shame, actually, we didn't have those numbers to what we were buying next. But yeah, I'll definitely keep you updated, Grace. And yeah, just to your listeners, you know, if you think that, you do want a bit more for yourself, or you can do something, just take that first step and you won't believe how the world will open up for you. Just go for it.
Stephanie, thank you so much for your time. It's been so wonderful chatting with you, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Grace. Thank you so much.
To everyone who is listening along, we hope you have enjoyed this episode. Please like or review us on whatever platform you do use to listen to your podcasts. As I mentioned just before, if you have any questions for anyone here at the SBI team, or even Stephanie, I can ask her next time she jumps on the show, editor@smartpropertyinvestment.com.au. Stay up to date with us on our website. Subscribe to our newsletter, smartpropertyinvestment.com.au. Check us out on social media as well, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Until next episode, stay safe and well wherever you're listening from. Bye-bye.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs, and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property, or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Guests appearing on this podcast may have a commercial relationship with the companies mentioned.
It's safe to say the property market has been red hot over the last few years, with some of the markets we've selected in 2021 rising over 40% in a 12-month period. It's very likely that if you're a property owner, your property has gone up 20% minimum in value in the past 12 months, and you have most likely accrued sizable equity that can be recycled and extracted to build your investment portfolio. With interest rates increasing, You might be wondering where to invest to maximise capital growth and cash flow in 2022 and beyond. Well, to save you time, energy and guesswork, award-winning author and regular guest on the Smart Property Investment podcast, Paul Glossop and his team at Pure Property Investment have outlined the top 30 affordable suburbs poised for strong capital growth over the next few years with sound cash flow. Grab your free Top 30 Guide to Property Investment guide today at purepropertyinvestment.com.